good was Snakebite Whiskey? How good was Osmosis? Alrighty, thank you for coming down, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Keith Williams. I'm a massive Randy Rhoads fan from way back. I was lucky enough to see them in 1980 with Bob and Lee. And then I saw them again at the Heavy Metal Holocaust in 81. And then later on the Diary of a Madman tour, got to meet Randy Rhoads, got his autograph and all that stuff. But anyway, enough of that. The more important people are here tonight. We got a very special night for you, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Kelly Garni, best friend of Randy Rhoads, played on the first 2 Quiet Riot albums, absolute legend of rock and roll. We got Scott Shelley, who was Randy Rhoads' guitar teacher, who taught him what he knew until he could go on to the next level. Welcome to the stage, Scott Shelley, Kelly Garni. Thanks, brother. Okay, so welcome to the stage, guys. Look, I want to say something first and foremost. Tonight and this tour is a passion project. It's fan-based. It's been fan-forced. It is a passion project in the real sense that myself, Scuba Steve, in particular Scuba Steve, has driven this. He's put his heart and soul into this. The memorabilia you see across there, everything he's driven has really brought this together tonight. It's been a huge thing for him. Thank you guys for supporting it. I mean that. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into it. Welcome to the stage, guys.
Hey.
Hey.
Hey, I'm not working.
Let's check out the pedal boards here, Kelly.
Yeah, check out the pedal boards. Okay, Kelly, you got the mic there?
No.
Alrighty, I'm going to give Kelly my mic.
No.
Take that one. Can I just hold that one a second, Scott? Thank you, Scott. All right.
I guess we're going to share.
Let's start at the start. Just to introduce ourselves. You've heard who I am, which is nothing. But Kelly, give us a few words about where you come into the story, how you met Randy, and so on.
Oh, okay. Well, the way I met Randy was we were both had gone up a grade in school, and we were at a brand new school, and we were kind of like nerdy kids and weird and geeks or whatever you want to call us, but nobody wanted anything to do with us. And so I saw Randy, and there was just something about him that I thought was amazing, and I didn't know what it was. It seemed like he glowed. He really did. And I just said, there's something about that guy. And so I watched him for 3 days, and I really wanted to meet him and get to know him. And then on the 3rd day, he was eating lunch, and he had 2 tacos. I had 2 tacos. And so we had something in common right there. And so I walked over to him, to where he was sitting, which was away from everybody else in the school. And I said, hey, you got 2 tacos. I got 2 tacos. How about that? And he's like, yeah. And I go, hey, can I sit down and we'll have lunch? And he's like, oh, yeah. You know, he was happy somebody finally talked to him. And I was happy to have somebody to talk to. And I said, these tacos are pretty good, aren't they? And he goes, yeah, they are. And they actually were, because I remember them very well. But anyways, from there, I went over to his house. He played some guitar for me. He didn't know how to play lead yet. He was just getting there from this guy. And the next thing I know, I'm learning what he learns from Scott here, kind of third party, because Randy would come home and teach me something like lead, or he was learning his leads, just learned his leads a little bit. And so he needed a bass player. We didn't have a bass yet. We went on to steal one.
All right, let's not get ahead of ourselves here, Kelly. All right, I think that's an awesome place to sort of pull up here and introduce.
Yes, I think
Scott.
so too.
You know, I love this part. I love all this kind of conversation, because what we've just heard now is Kelly telling us about Randy Rhoads before he even played guitar, before he could play lead, before he could play rhythm. And this is where Scott comes in. So, Scott, could you just sort of tell us the part that you played in Randy Rhoads' learning of the guitar and so on?
I hope so, yeah. I was, graduated high school at 16 and had been taking lessons from Joe Pass, been taking a year of classical guitar and playing, and taking lessons from Al Carnes, who was part of Valley Arts Guitar. And he was having me read through clarinet books. It's a lot of jazz, because we grew up, in the Valley. We joined the union, Local 47, American Federation of Musicians. We're the professionals at 14. So you had to read a lot of jazz, so a lot of influences. But my teacher actually at Valley Arts said, getting a lot of requests for a rock teacher, and I think you'd make a good teacher. I was like, seriously? And he goes, yeah. So I've got like 6 kids that want to come in on a Saturday. You want to give it a go? I said, yeah, let's do it. So we did that for about 6 months. And then I heard that Musoni was looking for another teacher. So I marched over there with my guitar and met Mrs. Rhoads.
Wow. Did everyone hear that word, Musonia?
Who?
Mrs. Rhoads?
Well, the bricks and the ivy. Kelly was telling me that you and Randy used to have to cut the ivy at Musonia. You had to trim the ivy.
Oh, yeah. We used to, the place had a bunch of ivy in front of it. And
it's magical.
Me and Randy were trying to make money to buy amps, because as soon as we kind of learned what we were doing, we wanted bigger and bigger amps. And that like went on for many, many years. We always wanted a bigger amp. Every musician here knows what I'm talking about. So Mrs. Rhoads would pay us each $5 to trim the ivy in front of her business, and so that was Musonia was an amazing place, and for this guy to be teaching there when he's 16, that's some street cred.
Yeah,
right there.
That's something I'd like to pick up on there. Let's remember the ages of these people. Like Scott was round about 16, Randy Rhoads was round about 14. That's where we're at now. A lot of people sort of suggest that, Scott, he looks too young to have been Randy Rhoads' teacher, but we're talking about teenagers here. So,
yeah.
So how did the lessons go, Scott? Tell us a little bit about how it worked.
Mrs. Rhoads, could not call her Dolores, because she was slight, but a force of nature. And it was about an hour that she had, read this, can you play some of this, some of that? And she said, my son's looking for, he wants to get into some rock stuff, so I think you'll do. So he was fiercely focused on guitar. And anybody, how many guitar players in this room, raise your hand? Like everybody? You can teach people to play guitar, but you can't teach them to be a guitar player. And the guitar players who are the ones that cannot keep their hands off
so true.
A guitar. And he was like that. Again, because I was pretty young, but I had an obligation and a responsibility to try to pass on some of what I already knew. And that was, what you got from jazz, for one thing, was how to play over changes. You need to play over the chord changes. Unless you're a bebopper, then you play outside the changes. That was an important thing. Obviously, you've got minor pentatonic scales, you've got some major scales, that kind of stuff. I had some classical too. I was trying to get my head around Fernando Soar, and I think I had the Frederick Node classical book.
So how does that fit in with when a young Randy Rhoads walks into your room with a guitar in his hand? How does that fit into what you showed him and what advice you gave him to go to the next level?
Again, I knew what I was expected to know growing up. The San Fernando Valley, North Hollywood, Sherman Oaks, Van Nuys, that whole area, there were so many good musicians. And a lot of them went to my high school, Grant High School. Yeah. I met Jeff Porcaro as another famous drummer and an amazing person when he was 13 at a junior high school Battle of the Bands, Yeah. And you were expected to know a certain amount of stuff if you wanted to be a professional, be a studio musician. So I felt it was like my duty and responsibility to say, well, we need to know a little bit of country. This is some jazz. This is what we're going to get from jazz. This is what I know about guitar at this point. Two things I remember, and I'm still teaching a couple of days a week at a private school up in the Gulf Coast. I told them, don't get hypnotized by your fingers.
Yes, yeah.
In fact, we're going to close our eyes, we're going to play in the key of B minor, and I'll change some chords, so use your ears, figure out how to adapt to the changes that are coming up, which we'd already talked about. And at first he was like, that's weird. And I go, nah, dude, just close your eyes, let's try this. Don't get hypnotized by your fingers,
Yeah.
which is cool. But at some point, you should have some muscle memory. Your fingers actually know where to go. You don't think you do. It's like learning to drive a car. You know, at first you were totally aware of the pedals and the turn signals and everything, but at some point, you have muscle memory and you can do that. So I knew that you had to do that.
Yeah.
I do remember, because Musoni was full music school. I mean, we had
it
brass,
just
woodwinds,
reeked of music. It
drums,
was like,
piano, the whole thing. And there was a little, a girl was probably, 11 or 12 and had a crush on Randy. She was like, he was a good looking
Was this the
kid.
little girl that played the flute?
Played the flute.
Yeah.
And she, we went
Not
out-
at band camp. Not at band camp, though.
No, not a band camp flute. And she actually interrupted. She opened the door to our, as we were having a lesson, and Randy he's just like, I'm having a lesson. And it was like right back, like going, and she was like, oh, sorry,
Yeah. That's awesome. Look,
That's
Kelly.
focus, man.
That is focus. And Kelly, can you tell us then, like, when Randy had lessons with Scott, and then he sort of cascaded those lessons down to you, and what did you guys do with that then? You picked up and ran with it, and you with your band and so on?
Well, Randy would take a lesson and he'd learn something. Now he needed to practice it. And so we turned me into a sort of a temporary bass player by using a guitar that was the house guitar that was just kept in the house. And he said, play the first 4 strings. And he would show me what to do. And so I would do it and over to get better at it. And then he'd say, okay, just keep doing it. And then I would play it literally for hours while he kept doing his thing over and over and over and over until it got, where he wanted it.
Yeah, great. And so tell us how that sort of progressed into the recording of the 2 albums, the 2 Sony Japan albums. Obviously, you formed a band, you got guys together and so on.
Yeah, we really wanted to be rock stars. I mean, we got, his brother took us to our first concert we ever went to, which was Alice Cooper and Black Oak, Arkansas. And we thought, we didn't know who Black Oak, Arkansas was. We thought they were some country band. And we go, well, that kind of sucks. And then we knew a little bit about Alice. And so we see this show and we're like, that's going to be us someday. And from then on, we were just addicted to a dream, and to the point where we stopped going to school. And of course, our parents got called, and there was a big kerfluffle about it. But and they'd say, are you guys going to go to school? And we'd say, well, yeah, of course we will, And then we wouldn't, because we wanted to stay home and play. And eventually, after enough times of telling us we had to go to school, they actually gave up. And they said, forget it, So from then, it was on. And we got good enough to form a band, and with somebody that we knew from school that also played guitar, and he sang. So we did a little thing with him, and the original our drummer in Quiet Riot, Drew Forsythe, he went to our school too. So we recruited him into the band, and we formed a band called Mildred Pierce. And then from there, we just formed more bands and more bands and more bands. And then I found Kevin Dubrow, and then once he got into the picture, that's where Quiet Riot came from.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. It's amazing to me as a fan to hear this. This is from the horse's mouth. These are 2 of the guys that were there. They lived it. They were best friends with Randy Rhoads and so on. You said something there that was interesting to me, that we finished school. We were done with school. And Scott, I know that there was a point that you had to say to Big D, Randy's mother, Randy is done with guitar school. Could you just tell us that? Again, we know the legend of the story of the guitar teacher that told Mrs. Rhoads. I want to hear it from your mouth. This is amazing.
Yeah, I felt an obligation and responsibility to try to give him as much information as I knew at that point in history about what you needed to be a professional guitarist in Los Angeles, whether you were going to do sessions or tours or whatever.
Yeah.
But he was such a sponge, and it was so fiercely dedicated to it. Like I said, he couldn't keep his hands off a guitar.
Yeah.
And you can teach people to play guitar. You can't teach them to be a guitar player.
Yeah.
And there was a point where I just said, Mrs. Rhoads, again, can't call her Dolores, I'm done here. My job is done. He's on beyond me. So, you know, she goes, I can't believe it. I know, seriously, he needs somebody else who can take him to the next level. I've done what I could do. And she was, you know, she was a bit mystified. She was great. She was amazing.
Yeah.
That's how that happened, really.
Yeah. No,
I just felt like it didn't make any sense to continue to do it. I'd done the Vulcan mind melds, you know, like in Star Trek, and he was coming along so quickly.
That's incredible. At that age as well, and you know, really then it was a case of what was he going to do next?
Yeah.
You know, and one thing I do like that Kelly told me a few days ago is that Randy Rhoads at that point, he was improving in his playing so much. He didn't improve. You tell it. I mean, he wasn't improving by the year or by the month. You know, he was.
Yeah, he didn't get better, you know, every year, every month, every week. He got better every 2 minutes. He seriously. I mean, it was interesting to watch. He'd play something, and then he'd play it again, and he'd play it again, and each time it would be 10 times better than the time before it. And then pretty soon after 4 or 5 times, he'd go, yeah, okay, that'll work for now. So that's just the talent that he had in him. And Scott here brought him to the level of educating him in the guitar to where Randy could finally teach himself.
Yeah.
And that's real important to any musician. And that's what makes musicians unique, is when they teach themselves. And if it wasn't for this guy, Randy wouldn't have ever gotten to that level.
No, I think he would have. He would have, man. He was committed, totally committed to it. I do. That's.
I got a question for you, Scott. How many students did you have at Musonia?
Not very many. Maybe
Really?
4.
4?
Yeah, I had about 6 at Valley Arts, so I was actually teaching both places, and you know.
Yeah,
not a whole lot.
Randy eventually became a teacher at Musonia. Scott had 4 students. Randy had 75. Some of them were girls that had a crush on him, and they'd take the lesson just so they could stare at him, and they, you know. But there was actually like 3 or 4 of those, and so. But yeah, 75 students. I mean, I can't even imagine. I've had like 2 and 3 at a time, you know, even 4, and that's a lot for me. But 75. And he always used to say, you know, I love teaching because I learn from my students. Because what they'd do is they'd come in and they'd go, oh, well, you know, I want to learn this song by these guys, you know, and it maybe wasn't something that we normally listen to. So he would have to learn it in order to teach it. So there you go. It's an exchange, you know, learn from the student learns from the teacher.
And you have to organize your knowledge. You know, whether you're talking about modes or, you know, chords, whatever, adult chords, you know, with extensions and stuff. You have to organize that to be able to tell somebody and teach somebody that stuff. So it does help you teach it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he had those 75 students while we were doing Quiet Riot. And Quiet Riot was, you know, a lot of hard work for us. I mean, we had ridiculous rehearsal schedules. And for him to do all that teaching and then come in and do the kind of stuff we were doing, it was really amazing that he could do that.
Yeah. And tell us about the live shows as well with Quiet Riot. Like tonight we've seen some live music, which is the energy of the live music is over and above what you get from the vinyl stuff. How was it to be on stage at the Troubadour or the Whiskey and all the Sunset Strips clubs, you know?
Yeah, the Starwood. We basically
Starwood,
grew up in this club that was owned by a Los Angeles gangster. And the place was known to be a big cocaine and Quaalude dealing place. There was a lot of that going on. We didn't see it, but that was revealed later. I
heard about it too.
The two albums that we did, we were basically told how to do them. we had our own ideas on how we wanted to do them, but we were locked in a box, and they said, do it this way. And we had to do everything these managers said because they paid for everything. Now, when we played live, we were uncontrollable. So the music live had more energy behind it. It had more balls. You know, it sounded good. And so that's why I'm here. I brought some of those songs to play them live.
Yeah.
I have Osmosis to help me out with that. Obviously, they know a little bit about Randy. So that's what the show's going to be tonight, coming up.
Awesome. Awesome. Look, guys, we're all against the clock, always the enemy. And look, if people want to know more, Kelly's got a book across there, Angels with Dirty Faces. Highly recommend it. If you want to know more, get that book. Look, we've got something that was quite important. Randy went on to do the Blizzard of Oz and Ozzy Osbourne's band and so on, as we all know. We've got a special message for someone who couldn't be here tonight. Bob Daisley has given us a special message. The VIP people have got a statement from Bob that's autographed. And if you'll bear with me, I'll read out what Bob has sort of said. It sort of talks about his journey with Blizzard of Oz and with...
Can I interrupt you 1 second?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, you know, I had a lot of conversations with Bob, and he told me all kinds of stuff about the whole time with Randy and Ozzy. And it was really fascinating to hear how those albums were created. So he really, really wanted to do this, but he's very sick. And he just couldn't do it. So I said, well, will you, write up a letter that we could read, so that you're kind of represented here. And because we're like the three people, me, him, and Bob, those were the most important people in Randy's, learning and his career. So Bob agreed to write this letter. And then I said, well, will you sign them? And he goes, yeah, I'll sign them. I don't think he knew what he was in for because we gave him about 150 of these. And he hand signed every one. Every day he'd do a few more.
All right, so Bob's words are, I'll do my best to read them fluidly. My first encounter with Randy Rhoads was at Jet Records in London in the latter part of November 1979. He was 22, I was 29. I'd already been to Ozzy's house a couple of weeks prior, where he'd had a guitarist and a drummer ready and waiting to form his post-Black Sabbath band. When Ozzy and I went into his kitchen for a cup of tea during a break, I told him that I liked the idea of us working together, but that the other two guys, although good players and nice chaps, weren't what I would call world class. It was then that Ozzy told me about a guitarist in LA that he'd seen, a guitar teacher, which made me think of a straight guy with a cardigan, slippers, and a pipe and glasses. When Ozzy told me more, my immediate reaction was to tell him, let's get him over here then. We put the idea to David Arden, son of Don, who was managing the band and had wanted us on Jet Records. David's first reaction was to say no. To him, Randy was unknown, too young and American. They wanted to keep the band a UK band, UK-based. Eventually, David relented and agreed to our request to fly Randy over to England. When Randy, Ozzy, and I met up at Jet Records, we immediately began discussing band names, the Blizzard of Oz amongst them. The three of us caught a train from London up to Stafford, where we had a play together for the first time at Ozzy's house. During a break, after about 20 minutes of jamming, Randy and I said simultaneously to each other, I like your playing. And from that moment, we knew what we had was special. The next morning, when Randy and I were standing on Stafford railway station waiting for our train back to London, where I lived and Randy's hotel was, a strange feeling came over me, and I could hear the words, one day, people are going to be continually asking me, what was it like to play with Randy Rhoads? And that thought stayed with me ever since. We began auditioning drummers and writing material for our debut album. Drummer after drummer after drummer. The stream seemed endless, but to no avail. The right drummer just wasn't one of them. Eventually, after about 40 or so drummers, we had one guy left to audition, and if he didn't work out, the record company wanted to put us in the studio with a session player, which we were dead against. We wanted a complete band. As soon as Lee Kerslake began playing, Randy and I looked at each other with a sort of, where's this guy been all this time, look on our faces. and we knew straight away our band was complete. The band was named the Blizzard of Oz. We'd all been adamant about having a band name. We were all doing too much to be classed as sidemen or session players. We were writing the songs, arranging them, and I was writing all of the lyrics. The thing about the Blizzard of Oz was that the whole was much greater than the sum of the parts. We were all bringing out the best in each other, and the creativity was snowballing. I could go on and on about Randy's talent, his musical abilities, and his pleasant demeanor, but all that comes out in our recordings. The enjoyment and the love of what we were doing comes out in our playing and songs, all natural and from the heart. It seems now, looking back, that Randy, Ozzy, Lee, and I were destined to meet and fated to write and record those 2 albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Brief cheer, everybody. Thank you. I would personally like to thank everyone here today who has acknowledged and honored Randy's talent and existence just by being here. And a special thank you to Mr. Kelly Garni for instigating and organizing this event and expressing his interest and respect for his old bandmate Randy Rhoads. It's my honor to speak about Randy, and it was my honor to work with him and to know him. It was an absolute tragedy that he was taken from us at such a young age. But rather than focus on the sadness that he died, it is, I think, more important to focus on the gift of his life that he lived. My blessings to you, Randy, wherever you are. I'll see you over there when my time comes. And my blessings to those who acknowledge and respect his being. Our music will live forever because of you. I thank you all. And then Bob does one of his chants, which I'm sorry, I'm not up on all this new age stuff. I'll do my best. Nam Maholo Renge Kaio. Bob Daisley, the 6th of December, also my mum's birthday. Bless her, 2025. Happy days, Bob Daisley. I want to give the last words to Scott and then Kelly. So guys, Scott, if you'd like to just say something in closing.
Well, he's still teaching. He's still teaching people. I'm teaching 2 days a week. I took over last year for a friend, another wonderful guitar player. And I've got one 15-year-old who's got a flying V that he stripped and painted it black and put white polka dots on it. Yeah. And the funny thing about solos, now we're talking about, because he's learned, the crazy train and the middle solo and the ending solo and all that. And I never have. And I said, well, now it's your turn to teach me some of these solos, because with Randy, we never worked on solos like that. We worked on how to approach doing a solo, how to make a statement, and not just noodling and not necessarily showing off, but making a statement, making a phrase, that kind of stuff, and just jamming. But we never, if you want to learn a song, well, that's your job. You go home and learn a song.
Yeah, lovely. Look, also, I'd like to thank you guys for coming up on stage tonight, but the last word has to go to Kelly, man. I mean, tell us, give us the last word, and we thank you for coming to Australia. We thank you for doing this. It's been an amazing insight.
Yeah, I'm having a great time here. I love your country. I love all you people. I mean, I think it's funny, some of the things you say. Kind of a lot,
Look, Kelly, you're the last man standing. You are honouring the legacy.
Standing,
he's honouring the legacy of Randy Rhoads. Not many people are still doing that publicly. We know that for whatever reason, but you are the last man standing,
Yeah. Now, those first 2 albums we released, a lot of people really slag them and say they suck and all that. I remember playing them and having so much fun and getting such huge crowds, really, really getting into it. So I say, let's modernize the stuff. Let's play it today and make it kind of current. So I've tried to do that. I've got a good band here. We had 2 rehearsals, did 1 show last night. So, there may be a few warts, but you know what? I think it's pretty damn good, and I hope you all enjoy it. And I really thank you myself for coming out.
That's awesome. Thank you, everyone. We're gonna exactly as Kelly said, we're gonna play some. Well, I'm not. They are. some of the first two Quiet Riot albums. I think that Scott touched on something as well. Like, what is making it in the music industry? Is it selling millions of albums? Is it being remembered? Sometimes people just want to be remembered for something simple. I really think that Randy Rhoads would have been like to be remembered, just inspire people or teach people. And I think he still is doing that. He made it. Thank you, guys.